everyone. GM. Welcome back to the SolanaFloor weekly recap, where we break down Solana's biggest stories straight from the SolanaFloor newsroom. I'm joined, as always, by our senior journalist, Finn. GM Finn.
GM Jack, how we doing?
We are doing great. It's a Green Friday. And, of course, the one and only Mr. Thomas Bahamas from just across the pond. GM, sir.
GM, Jack. Good morning, right?
It is. It's a good morning for you. It's a great afternoon for us. We were chatting just before the stream that it's probably the first time in months, maybe even in 2026, that we're not poorer on a Friday than we were on a Thursday. Love to see it. We'll break down the prices in a second, but it's been a massive week in terms of news. Too many stories to fit into a tiny newsletter that's action-packed as always, but there's a lot of developments around the drift story, bit of a recovery. We have a landmark SEC ruling that's, I think, genuinely good news for all of DeFi, not just Solana. We had Solana's biggest Q1 in history. There's a big T next to that number, which we'll get into in a second. And of course, a couple of stories in there that are probably going to spark some angry comments, some discussion in the comments section. But, you know, it wouldn't be a Finn newsletter without some zingers in there. So let's get to prices first. We'll do a little vibe check, and then we're going to dive straight into the newsletter. Now, my read on the macro environment at the moment is that it's still sort of dictating a lot of the mood out there, right? Tiny bit of a temp check here. BTC, ETH, Sol, love to see it all up on the week. BTC is now at around $77,000, so that's up 7% on the week. ETH is at $2,400. It was not too long ago at $2,000, so that's good. Also up about 9% on the week. Sol is now trading at $90. Just before the stream. So that's 7.7% up on the week as well. Now, considering last week where we were with oil prices, people were saying there's a potential economic crisis. You know, we saw risk on assets taking an absolute beating. I think all in all, we're not looking too bad this Friday, I have to say. The S&P 500 is at all-time highs. If you are holding tokenized equities, on-chain stocks, probably looking quite delicious today. Thomas and I were talking to Mr. James Seifert from Bloomberg just yesterday, and we walked away from that conversation with plenty to be bullish about, both in terms of crypto ETFs, but also institutions building on crypto rails, building the infrastructure for other institutions to come on chain. So if you do want to listen to that conversation, of course, go to YouTube and you can check out that episode of The Big Picture. Now, Finn, bit of a vibe check here. What are we feeling sentiment-wise heading into the weekend? And then, Thomas, I'm also curious what your read on the trenches and generally CT engagement at the moment is. It's been quite quiet on the timeline, and I feel like we're sort of coming out of a rough period following those unfortunate events around drift. How are we feeling?
Yeah, look, I am ecstatic, Jack. I mean, this time last week, oil was about $100 a barrel. The Solana DeFi had lost, 300 million to a hack. It was looking like the end of the world. We were talking about a nuclear apocalypse, and 1 week later, the Strait is open. Everything, all the charts are in the green, and drift is coming back. Something's in motion. It's all looking very, very positive. Thomas, what's trader psychology looking like out there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot more positive than we've seen in recent history, right? So a lot of the bearish narratives have pretty much been crushed at this point, right? We got the Strait open. And it seems like risk assets are definitely, increasing at this point. I'm loving it. I feel like there has been, a ton of bearish sentiment for the last few weeks. So to see, a little spark of bullishness is pretty exciting. So I'm excited for us to have this conversation while the prices actually go up for once.
Fingers crossed. There's no crisis over the weekend. We do expect some bullish news on Sunday. Hopefully by Monday, we're still sort of sitting in the green. Now, Finn, your newsletter, absolute banger as always, 6 stories. There's a zinger there in headline number 6. We'll get to that in a second. We're also going to talk about a bonus angle with story 1. Now, Solana's stablecoin landscape is something that we've been covering at SolanaFloor for a long time. There's potentially monumental development on that front, bit of a shift in tide, if you will. So without further ado, Finn, I'm going to let you intro the newsletter here, and then we'll dive into story number 1.
Yes, well, look, it has indeed been a brilliant turnaround. As I mentioned earlier, last week, very, very doom and gloom, a lot of poor sentiment. But this week, it's completely turned around. Tether has stepped in. It's going to be Drift's knight in shining armor to revive the Solana's oldest perp dex. So very, very exciting there. Jump Crypto has stepped forward and claimed ownership of Bison Fire, which has been absolutely killing it on the PropAMM front. The SEC is coming out and they're breaking down regulatory barriers like never before. I think they almost feel a bit bad about it and trying to catch up for lost time under Gary Gensler's iron fist. But it's encouraging to see all the same. And as a standard, there's a bunch of airdrop farmers out there sulking about some allocations, about some registration fees. So it almost feels like we're back to a very, very normal week in Solana land. So very, very exciting. And again, most importantly, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Oil is going back around the world. We might have averted a global economic crisis. So it's all very, very exciting. I think, dare I say it, we might even be back.
Oh, wow. Hopefully, fingers crossed we are back. To what extent we're back, we'll know by Monday, and certainly next week's streams will make it absolutely clear. So story number one here, I think this is something that we've all been waiting for since April 1st, definitely since April 2nd, when everyone was made aware of the true damage of the drift hack. Now, the headline is Tether leads $150 million drift recovery plan after Circle refused to freeze stolen funds. So it's been about 15 days after that $285 million exploit. Depositors are finally getting some answers as to what a recovery process is going to look like. Tether, as Finn mentioned, is sort of the knight in shining armor here. They're coming in, well, they're leading about $150 million recovery effort alongside, love to hear it, the Solana Foundation. Now, bit of critical context here, and excuse me for going on a slight tangent if I do, because I think this is very, very important. We focus so much on USDC and Circle in Solana land that maybe we're sort of missing the forest for the trees, right? So Tether is the original stablecoin, and it was launched in 2014. It's a long, long time ago. So they were originally real coin. Then they had a bit of a rebrand. They've had their fair share of controversy over the years. And I think transparency was part of the issues. They had some regulatory run-ins, as you would expect under Gary Gensler's iron fist, as Finn mentioned. But they've managed to out-challenge every issue, right? So today, Tether has about $185 billion of the entire $320 billion stablecoin market. That's roughly 60% dominance, which is huge. And my favorite stat about Tether, still blows my mind actually, is USDT. They had to back all of this USDT, right? $185 billion of it. They've become one of the biggest buyers of US Treasury, US debt in the world. So their Treasury exposure now is $140 billion. And you've probably heard of Bo Hines. He's now the CEO of Tether USA. He said they expect to become in the top 10 largest Treasury holders in 2026. That's a private crypto company ranking alongside sovereign nations in terms of their exposure to US government debt. We love to see it. And finally, this is worth mentioning as well. I think Tether holds over $7 billion in Bitcoin. That makes them the second largest private corporate holder in the world. And they also hold an estimated $23 billion in gold. So they're definitely pumping our bags and they're coming in as the good guys. Now that we know all of that, now that we know how much of an OG Tether is, Finn, set the scene for us here. What's actually part of this recovery plan?
Right. So what can we actually expect? You put it quite elegantly. Tether is coming in. They're the knight in shining armor. They're going to put Drift back on its feet. They're leading a $150 million effort in tandem with the Solana Foundation and some other unnamed partners. The general idea, what's been communicated publicly, is that a recovery pool is going to be set up, and all affected users are going to be given a recovery token, which represents their share in that pool. So over the next few years, maybe decades, who knows how long it's going to take, Drift will funnel a substantial portion of their revenue into that recovery pool. And I understand that users who hold the recovery token will be able to redeem liquidity against that. So it almost gamifies the recovery in a way. You can hold your recovery token until the end to get a larger portion, or you can kind of cash out as quickly as you want. That's how it seems to be taking shape. I don't know that for sure, but that kind of seems like the path that's being taken. There's going to be a bit of a security restructuring program as well. It's going to be led by OtterSec and Asymmetric Research. So there's going to be a whole lot going on behind the scenes at Drift to make sure that their security is as watertight as possible. They're going back to a lot of things that people arguably should have been using in the first place. We're talking about dedicated signing devices. They're removing durable nonces on all the administrative contracts. And there's also a community-governed multisig being formed. So we don't know who's going to be on that. That's being kept on a need-to-know basis, but we can understand that it's going to be other ecosystem leaders, DeFi leaders, perhaps some people from right at the top of the Solana Foundation. No one really knows. But the idea is that they're trying to really tighten up security and operational security as much as possible before they relaunch. Again, one of the most fascinating things about this whole Tether move is that in the past, Drift was running USDC as their entire settlement layer. That's being subbed out. So now Tether and USDT are going to be taking the reins from there. And I think that's probably the most fascinating part of everything that's going on there. So as you mentioned, Circle has been the de facto stablecoin of Solana for a very, very long time. Tether has seen this opportunity and they're sliding in to try and change the narrative around that and perhaps steal that crown from Circle. So Thomas, what's your angle here on Tether sweeping in here? Are you going to side with Circle here? Do you think Circle was right to avoid freezing funds? Tell me a bit more about the dynamics at play here between Circle and Tether in this drift scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's two sides to it, right? I mean, Tether actually froze some funds. They're known for being able to freeze funds a lot faster. USDCs, Circle's kind of citing a lot more like regulatory. We didn't have the law step in, so that's why they didn't freeze it. But I mean, they had 7 hours to freeze funds that were actually being transferred, right? So they didn't act. And I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity for Tether to step in. Like as a marketing move, it's genius. Paulo knows exactly what he's doing. He's been in this game for a long time. And we've seen the uptake of stables on Solana, right? It's growing massively. The velocity of these stable coins is like unmatched on other chains, is what we've seen. So for them to see this opportunity and take it, this is great for the community. There is going to be some recourse for people that lost funds, and then on top of that, I mean, Tether comes in as the good guy. It is a fantastic marketing opportunity for them. What do we have? I think it's 55% Solana dominance of USDC right now, and it's basically funding Coinbase and Base as well, right? Like they're getting the yield for that, so they're making a lot of money on that. So I know that we've talked about us getting off of USDC for a while, and I think diversity on stablecoins is great, right? I think there's going to be new opportunities, and I think that it's going to be better off for the community overall. So there's a lot going on there, but I mean, on the net, I mean, it's extremely positive, I think, overall.
Here's an interesting question for anyone who's listening. Actually, you've seen, no doubt, a whole list of supporting tweets, posts, threads coming out saying, look, we've had our time with Circle. It's maybe time to sort of shift our allegiance over to USDT and Tether. SolanaFloor put out a banger tweet yesterday, sort of a nice collage of some of the community support. So curious what the community's take is. Are you ready to get rid of a vast majority of your USDC and transact using USDT largely on chain? Are you maybe going to be sort of delaying that process? What are your thoughts? Let us know. Here's my take for the time being. As Thomas mentioned there, I think the timing is perfect. Paolo's played this perfectly. Now, whether it's a genuine recovery rescue mission or sort of a calculated play to try and take some of Circle's market share dominance on Solana, or both, we don't know, but the optics, again, are flawless. The fact that they've done this in partnership with the Solana Foundation, I think, speaks volumes. One thing that I can point to, which sort of makes me lean more towards it being a coordinated but also genuine effort, is Lily's post. Lily said, there were some sort of hidden shots there, if you read in between the lines as well, but she was basically saying, look, values also matter. I think the insinuation there is that between USDT and USDC, or companies behind them, Circle and Tether, one leans more towards the sort of core crypto ethos than the other. But I'll let you make your minds up, of course. Do let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. And final point here from me is that while all of this was happening, as Thomas mentioned, on April 1st, April 2nd, we didn't really hear much from Circle. But now, over the last sort of week or so, we've seen Jeremy Allaire, the founder and CEO of Circle, giving speeches about moral quandaries. He's in Seoul. He's posting vlogs from Indonesia. And I think the community's noticed this discrepancy between how hands-on Tether has been versus how distant Circle continues to be. But that's my 2 cents. Any thoughts on that, lads?
Look, I was disappointed by Circle's lack of action during this whole process. Yes, I understand that they don't necessarily want to be playing vigilante over funds. They don't want to be taking the law into their own hands and freezing $230 million worth of capital in the midst of what was one of the most devastating hacks we've seen in Solana history. At the same time, they had an opportunity to stop all of these horrendous losses. There's a strong belief that the funds were being siphoned away to North Korea to fund nuclear development. So look, if you can step in to stop that, maybe you should. It is a slippery slope. If they start doing it for one people on a whim, that means that people can be upset when they don't do it for other protocols. But look, I think Tether's done really, really well to step in here. I think Circle should have intercepted the funds, and I think it sets a precedent for what we can expect to see in the future. Thomas, would you agree or deny my claim there?
Yeah, I agree. And also there was just a comment that flashed up on the screen. I don't know if you guys saw that, but decentralized stables will take over. I mean, I would like for that to happen. I'd like to see that increase. But I think there's the other side of that too, where it's like, all right, a lot of people have a lot of trust in Circle and they have for a long time. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing here is, Circle has USDC, which is a centralized and freezable token at this point, and they didn't freeze it. So, during, one of the bigger hacks, so what are we even doing here? If that's what's going to happen, like, why wouldn't we be using more decentralized coins? I think that ultimately retail will probably use more of these. But when you're going between protocols and you're going between, businesses, I would assume they're probably just going to take, USDT or USDC is when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I do actually want to come back to that. I think we do need a decentralized stablecoin for Solana. Stablecoin issuing companies make a huge amount of revenue. There's no reason why we can't develop a decentralized stablecoin on Solana and then use revenues from that to continue to grow the ecosystem. We're seeing this on other ecosystems. Hyperliquid's doing this with USDH. There's a lot of different ways to play this than relying on Tether or Circle. The window is there for someone to step in and actually build something really creative that can benefit Solana long term as well.
Yeah, two points on that. One is, as part of this ongoing Solana stablecoin discussion that we've been having both in SolanaFloor and sort of broadly in the ecosystem, the revenues that are generated in the Solana ecosystem are part of this discussion, right? Where does Circle take some, arguably 50% of those revenues? Will they have a contractual obligation to share it with Base because of their deal with Coinbase? So that's also an issue. Another comment here coming through, HYUSD on Sol. There are many, many examples, as Finn mentioned, as Thomas mentioned. I think we'll be seeing new, maybe even white label stablecoin solutions emerging on Solana. That's quite interesting. But the second point I wanted to make here is what we're looking at on screen here, which is an interesting post from Fabiano. It's about the rate at which Drift is generating revenue, or at least they were before the hack on April 1st, and their ability to repay this to the creditors, the users, essentially. It looks like it's going to take a long time at current rates. Any thoughts on this, lads, as to what they might be able to do with these new funds to increase revenue to then be able to reduce the time horizon for paying users back?
My tinfoil hat tells me that Tether is going to have a very heavy hand in everything that happens on Drift moving forward. Obviously, they've got tremendous resources. There's a whole lot of things they can do to actually elevate Drift into an extremely competitive perps DEX on Solana. So I don't think that we should necessarily take this old run rate as gospel. I think a lot of changes are going to be coming to Drift in the wake of Tether coming in here. So look, obviously, in the past, it would have taken them 20 years to generate that revenue to repay users. I think Tether's going to have a plan for that, and we'll have to wait and see what that's going to be.
Do you guys think that so right now the landscape of perps on Solana, there's a bunch of upcoming protocols, a bunch of new ones that are coming out, about to be released. With this and with so much focus on Drift, do you think that Drift is kind of getting like a head start for what's going to be coming out next? Is it like an unfair advantage for them at this point?
I don't think so, honestly. I think using the words head start for Drift in this context is probably a bit off, because they've had years to have a head start and it hasn't worked for them at all. I'm very optimistic. I'm very bullish on incoming perp DEXs to Solana. I really like Bulk, keeping an eye on Phoenix as well. I think there's a lot of very, very exciting things happening in the sector, and Tether and Drift, they're going to have a huge task ahead of them to stay competitive in that. But that's also what's going to make the coming years of Solana's perp scene so much fun. So very, very excited to see it all play out.
Yep. And at the end of the day, we will be watching USDT potentially, maybe someday, replace the existing USDC dominance on Solana. As you can see here, USDC for the longest time has been the dominant stablecoin on Solana, the default almost. And it's going to be quite interesting to watch over the coming months to see if that changes. If so, to what extent, how quickly is that going to change? But we've seen many high-ranking individuals, very, very important thinkers from the Solana ecosystem coming out in support of this shift. So I suspect it's been a long time coming. I suspect a lot of people have been waiting for something to happen, for us to sort of reach an inflection point, for us to then say, you know what, let's sort of reduce our dependency on Circle's USDC. Here's Max Kaplan saying every Solana DeFi protocol should be working towards supporting USDC. Every Solana DeFi user should be demanding that their favorite protocols support USDT. Tether won my support for a long time, potentially for life. I think, yeah, Max Kaplan's echoing the feelings, the thoughts, the sentiments of many people in the Solana ecosystem here, including people from Foundation. All right, story number 2. This one's a banger. We've got 3 Seeker lovers, enthusiasts, aficionados here in the chat. So we love to see this. Seeker developer count rises 106% quarter over quarter amidst Solana dApp Store boom. I think for me, it's one of the most exciting stories of the week. It's something where if you're not paying attention, it can sort of get swept under the rug. But this is critical for the fact that not just users, not just the amount staked, not just, again, daily active users, but the fact that developers are also increasing both in activity and number, I think is critical for the Seeker ecosystem. We love to see it. And again, given the fact that all 3 of us are Seeker users, maybe we can take some credit for the amount of activity in the ecosystem that's happening there. Finn, let's dive into the story. What's actually driving this, I want to say, insane uptick in developer activity?
Honestly, I think it's the flywheel effect that's been kickstarted with the launch of the SKR token. So I love this, first of all, because people have been saying for years now that as soon as a company launches a token, as soon as the airdrop farmers and the mercenary capital leaves an ecosystem, it evaporates and nothing ever happens. And the airdrop is actually the end of the story. It's not the start of a new chapter. Seeker has completely flipped that script. The token has actually become this lubricant that makes the whole engine work extremely efficiently. And the evidence is there. We've got 106% quarter-on-quarter growth in the Seeker developers. We've got 443 new people building apps on Seeker. I think even Thomas is one. So they've even managed to get Mr. Thomas Bahamas involved. There's 784 apps in the Solana dApp Store now. And look, the Solana Seeker ecosystem is thriving. It's going absolutely nuts. Season 2 is well underway, and I think it's an excellent proof of concept. This was an extremely ambitious experiment. People said it was lunar. People said it was absolutely never going to work, and here it is. 1, 2, 3 months after TG, and it's working exceptionally well. Thomas, you've got 3 Seekers. You're building in the Seeker dApp Store. What's your take here? Do you see the SKR airdrop as a success now, retrospectively?
Yeah, I 100% view it as a success, and I think the whole ecosystem is actually a success. If you're in the Solana ecosystem, like, why not build an app on it, right? I think that there is so much potential with what they're doing, and it's like the perfect way to target the Solana ecosystem is to build something on Seeker, right? You have people going through testing different apps. If you see something that you don't like about it, you can just build it at this point, right? I know that there's 150,000 phones plus out there, but how many actual users are there? There's probably 50,000 active users or more that are out there looking for something fun to use on their phone every day. Combine that too with no 30% fees like Google and Apple. I think that it's just, there are so many positives for this. And, with me being able to actually build an app, and I'm not a developer, I don't know how to code, I vibe coded an app in a couple days, basically is what it came down to. If I'm able to do that, I think that anybody can. So I think that what we're going to see is, like, there are going to be a lot more people building. They're going to build really cool apps that people want. And there's like inherent safety with all of the apps that are being built on there, because you have the seed vault and you have a lot of the pieces of what you need to build that are like out there already for you to use, right? They made it very easy to build apps on there. So I'm incredibly bullish on this ecosystem. Like, I still think that, it's early days, even though we're seeing a lot of volume and a lot more users ramping up. So I'm incredibly excited about it. What do you guys think?
I think as well, something that's worth mentioning is that Seeker holders are really getting in there as well. So about, I think, what, 71% of all circulating SKR is staked. So people are here long term. They're aligned with the vision. They want to dethrone the duopoly. Everyone's going on board. There's 10,000 plus daily active users on Seeker every single day. That's more than prior to the Seeker TGE anyway. So anyone who was telling you that as soon as you get the airdrop, move on and never pick up the phone again, they've been proven wrong. You know, there's more activity happening there now than there ever has been. And most people are signing more than 5 transactions a day. So it's not even like you wake up and you do an obligatory swap just to prove that you're there. It's, 5+ transactions. It feels very organic and very genuine. Jack, sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to?
Not at all. I was exactly going to make that point. Post airdrop daily active users. We've seen this time and time again, not just in the Solana ecosystem, but crypto in general. You have so much mercenary capital, right? TG happens, people leave, the daily active user number just collapses. It happens all over the place. Somehow, I think the Seeker flywheel, as you were talking about earlier, has flipped that script. Whether it's the 30% merchant fees, whether it's the fact that they have a fingerprint and sort of biometric security system, the hardware wallet is part of the phone. I'm not sure what it is, but the flywheel is working. So people are using it, but it's not just users. As the headline says, it's also developers, right? So they're not just coming for the airdrop. Clearly, they see massive amount of potential in a long list of active users. And it seems to be creating genuine retention here as well. On top of all of this, I've been talking about this for a long, long time. You've got original equipment manufacturers, OEMs at major conferences, people who don't want to touch crypto, but they're seeing the potential in the Seeker ecosystem. That's huge. People who are almost afraid to even talk about crypto because there's such legacy companies, storied companies, are now seeing potential in this ecosystem, which again, we love to see it. Hopefully, it's the beginning of a new wave, if you will, of hardware expansion. Again, I've been saying this since day one. I want more devices from the Seeker team. Hopefully, they produce something new, and I'll be definitely pre-ordering anything they produce. But in the interest of time, we are going to slide over to story number 3. This one's an interesting one. We were discussing this before the stream. To what extent this is going to be a banger for the time being remains to be seen. But any headline with the SEC giving DeFi a green light, I think, is worth our consideration. It's worth discussing. So the headline here is SEC gives DeFi apps a green light in statements on broker-dealer registration. Now, on the surface, this is huge. It is a landmark statement from the SEC because DeFi front ends and wallets now no longer need to register as a broker-dealer. Now, the reason why this is huge is because the entire industry has been begging for this for years. It was absolutely impossible under Gary Gensler's combative SEC regime. Now it's finally possible. To what extent it's going to change things in a sort of permanent, sustainable way, we don't know yet. So Finn, break this down for us.
Yeah, so as you rightly said, this is a new staff statement from the SEC's trading division. Look, it's not signed into law yet, so we can't point to it and say that this is an extremely airtight argument. But the theory is that moving forward, DeFi apps, front ends, browser extensions, wallets, these are now being classified as, I've lost term, they're covered user interfaces. So, and they do not need to register as a broker dealer, which means that they can't be held to the same kind of security laws that broker dealers would be otherwise, and effectively puts a bit of distance between them and this regulatory cloud that has made it so difficult for crypto companies to build previously. A16Z Crypto's General Counsel Miles Jennings has called this a huge win for DeFi. I think there's a lot of great positive steps that can be done here. It means that people don't need to worry that they're going to get slapped with some huge fine or lawsuit from Gary Gensler and the boys. And beyond the immediate impact of this, it also paints a picture for upcoming bills like the Clarity Act. We're seeing a lot more progress towards that getting actually across the line. We have Brian Armstrong, who was, prior to this, he was actually quite against getting the Clarity Act through. There was a lot of issues over stablecoin yield flows. Brian Armstrong's kind of turned around on that and he said, look, it's time to get it done. We only have a few months before the US midterms, and if those go badly for a lot of crypto enthusiasts who want to see the Republicans stay in power, it's going to be very hard to get that act passed. So look, Thomas, you're on the ground in the US. What's your knee-jerk reaction on this statement from the SEC? Do you think it's as big a deal as people are making out?
Yeah, I think it's huge. It's very positive for anybody that's in DeFi or anybody that's building in the US, right? I think it was a lot of these type of rules that were keeping teams out of the US originally. Like I still can't access a lot of DeFi protocols or perps dexes in the US without a VPN. I mean, not that I do it, but that's like the state of where we're at because of things like this. So when we're seeing them come out with statements like this, it's not, you know, a law signed into law or anything along those lines. But what we're starting to see is, hey, we're going to get some clarity whether or not the Clarity Act passes, right? You know, ideally it passes and passes soon. But I think the appetite for a lot of, you know, the institutions, a lot of the people, that a lot of the regulators and a lot of the retail consumers is, hey, we want this. Like we are all on board with this. And if you're not going to sign it into law, we're going to do everything that we can to continue to let people build. So I'm excited about this. I mean, if you know, developments like this can keep going, you know, I think that it's positive for the entire industry. So, you know, nothing to hate. I love it.
I want to add a but to the end of that. I know we've said this before. We'll probably end up saying it many, many times. We're not where we were under Gary Gensler's combative SEC regime. We're not there. We have made massive strides in terms of regulation and clarity, regardless of what's actually signed into the law. But we're not in the clear yet. As you can see here on screen, the Clarity Act being signed into law in 2026 is still at around a 60% chance. We'd love to see that higher than a 75% chance, of course. There's a lot hanging on this, right? So yes, we've gone from regulation by brute force, but this Clarity Act deadline, I think, needs to happen. It needs to be prioritized to a certain extent. Another word that we've been saying a lot is the word midterms, right? You've got Senator Loomis coming out and saying if it doesn't happen before the midterms, basically the crypto industry has to wait until 2030 to get a second chance, which, you know, it's not a very optimistic forward-looking statement. She's quite pessimistic about what happens to crypto legislation if the midterms don't go in favor of the crypto industry. So yeah, what we're hearing from crypto advocates close to Washington, D.C. is that if they lose, or if we lose in this case, the House in the midterms and clarity isn't signed by November, then essentially it's straight back to the drawing board. And as much as the trajectory right now is genuinely positive, we are still very much hoping and praying that that happens before the midterms. Now, story number 4. This is right into Finn's wheelhouse here. I'm sure reading this and writing this was greatly enjoyable to you, Finn. Let's read the headline here. Solana PropAMMs better than CEX in 99.3% of retail swaps. Absolute banger headline. I love this. Now, it's very much about market structure. It's very much a deep dive. So do go and read the article. You're gonna learn a lot for sure. Finn does a lot of research on this. Now, Jump Crypto here, the guys who are behind FireDancer, they published a very comprehensive research paper on PropAMMs in general, right? They're saying that there's a bit of an eye-opening claim here. PropAMMs on Solana up to 99.3% of the times are beating centralized exchanges. So it's worth reiterating. Finn, walk us through the research and what really stands out to you as not just something that's monumental now, but also in terms of the opportunity.
So this is fascinating. Jump Crypto has basically come out and they've provided some empirical data on something that we've all known for the better part of 6 months. PropAMMs are absolutely killing it on Solana. It's probably the most efficient spot DeFi regime we've seen in a very, very long time. It's an extremely powerful model, and there's now categorical evidence that traders who use PropAMMs on Solana are getting considerably better fills than they would be on centralized exchanges. So throughout March, Jump Crypto, who, as you said, they're the team behind FireDancer, they're one of the most prolific and most reputable market makers and high-frequency trading firms in the crypto industry. They analyzed 20 million fills throughout March, and this is the data that they've been able to pull out. So I'm going to pull up this one here that you've got on the screen. Sorry, Jack. Give me 2 ticks. There we go. So the cost between PropAMMs and top centralized exchanges. We can see there that at 0.72 bips, that's the median cost to traders swapping on a PropAMM. So if you go to Titan, if you go to Jupiter, and you just route your SOL through something where like Bison Fire or Humidify, you're getting an extremely efficient price on your SOL. If you are trading on a centralized exchange, it's a much wider window. It goes anywhere up to 10 bips instead of 0.72. So you're almost at risk of paying 10 times, not 10 times more, but you're 10 times less efficient than what you might be if you're just trading directly on Solana. Look, it proves something that we've known for a very long time. We've spoken at length in the past about how PropAMMs are able to support a huge amount of volume on very, very little liquidity. And Jump has actually just put this all into a very cohesive paper for us all to read through. As further evidence to this, Sol trading volume, Sol USD trading volume specifically is far more liquid on Solana than on centralized exchanges. So if you can drop down to those stats there, Jack. Here we go. Sorry. Yeah. So over the month of March, we had $19.87 billion of PropAMM volume on Solana. Comparatively, between Binance, Coinbase, OKX, and Buyback themselves, they managed 19.22 billion. So look, there's just a huge amount of volume and a huge amount of demand for trading Sol on Solana. PropAMMs are consistently giving much better fills than what people are getting on centralized exchanges. So it's essentially, it's a no-brainer that if you want to be trading Sol, you should be doing it in DeFi on Solana. And for a very, very long time, the promise of DeFi was one of accessibility. It meant that everybody can trade anything at any time. But the trade-off there was that you'd lose out on execution. That's now changing. Solana is offering better execution than centralized exchanges. We've got the accessibility. We've got better execution now. So there's really no reason to be using centralized exchanges anymore. And what's most exciting is that Jump says that this is going to go even further. So it's been limited to Sol USD for a very, very long time. Jump expects that we're going to see that branch out into things like RWAs, into tokenized stocks. It really is, we are really in our infancy for PropAMMs at the moment. Now, there's still some arguments that maybe CLOBs are more effective than PropAMMs. I haven't made up my mind on that so much. I think PropAMMs and CLOBs are both exceptional tools for very different things. I'm happy to dive into that maybe on a different stream with a bit more detail. But Thomas, what's your knee-jerk reaction here to seeing this staggering efficiency that Jump has put out?
Man, I think this is so huge for all the users out there, right? To offer the best trading experience, better than any centralized exchange, it's huge, right? You know, if you can go to Titan, Jupiter, and you can get filled for fantastic prices. I think this is, I mean, it's huge. It makes Solana the everything exchange. It makes it the best place to trade any coin at this point. And it's good to see Jump actually building BisonFi, right? They kind of held back from telling anybody this for a while. I know that you were making some guesses as to who it was before, but I feel like they've done a lot to push Solana forward. I know that there's always some controversy with them, but I mean, if you look at what they've actually been building, I mean, I think it's been fantastic. Now, when it comes to PropAMMs, like trading Solana and spot, like they're nailing it, right? It's sticky. I think that people stick around a lot more when it comes to spot trading. I like to hold my coins for a long time. So I think that is a really fantastic product, but I mean, we're still not quite there with the perps. How does this work with perps? PropAMMs are not necessarily working with leverage exchanges. Is this going to lead into that, or how does that work, Vin?
The jury is still out on what's the best approach. The Ellipsis team is working on, Ellipsis Labs is working on Phoenix Trade, which obviously is an up-and-coming perpsex on Solana using the PropAMM model. Listen, there's a lot of arguments for the PropAMM design for perps. There's a lot of arguments against it. I think one of the more compelling things that people don't often mention is that market makers need continuous funding rates to be able to execute properly. They need to be able to continue to adapt and make changes throughout the duration of a block instead of updating every period of 50 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds. I'm not convinced that the PropAMM is better for perps than the CLOB is. There's a great point made by Kobe in that article there. If you scroll down, Kobe is the co-founder of Bulk, and he says that look, CLOBs are the de facto market structure for the great world of TradFi. 99% of TradFi runs on a CLOB. Jump obviously uses CLOBs as well, very, very efficiently. So look, are these guys wrong? Has a bunch of devs on Solana been able to reinvent the financial system and find a market structure model that is better than what the entire world has been using for an extremely long time? I'm not convinced. We'll need to see how that plays out, but look, needless to say, if you're a retail trader and you just want to go to an app and you want to get the best price you can on swapping USD for Sol, PropAMMs are delivering that for you in absolute spades. So look, yes, the average person probably doesn't care about getting 0.07 bips instead of getting like 10 bips. It's a very, very small margin of volume, but if you're a HFT, if you're a market maker, this is stuff that's very, very important. So it helps build far more efficient markets. It gives retail users better swaps at the end of the day. So I think both models can coexist. And at the moment, PropAMMs on spot, they're just absolutely crushing it.
Yeah, and
Thomas.
to go into that, I mean, if you're a retail and you're trading on a centralized exchange, you get much worse rates than what they were comparing in that article, right? Like that's like top VIP tiers. But if I go onto Coinbase and if I want to swap, $100 into Bitcoin or into Solana, I'm paying a ton of fees. It's like $2 just for the trade, and then on top of that is the spread. So it could be 5%, for a smaller trade like that. Where if you go on chain, the value prop is there now, right? Go on chain, you get better pricing. You put in $100 USDC into Solana, you get like 99.99, right? Like it's so close now. They're so good that it is like the reason to get people on chain. So I'm really excited about that. And to go into the perps a little bit, Jack, I know that you just released a video on perps. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, you mentioned perps there and sort of how all of this ties into perps. So I wanted to butt in and say, let's address the elephant in the room, right? Which is that we have Hyperliquid that essentially the entire Solana ecosystem is trying to compete with. And I think it's worth remembering something that Mert said, Mert, depending on where in the world you're from. Essentially, if you want to outcompete Hyperliquid, you've got to build something that's 5 times better, not just something that's relatively on a similar level. That's a massive challenge. It's a very tall order. And going back to some of the previous stories that we were discussing, surely now is the time for something like that to emerge. Whether or not it's going to happen in the next 12 months, I'm not convinced as of yet. It needs to, definitely. If you think back to when was it, early April, maybe end of the previous month, that Chase came out with his 5,500 word essay about the state of Solana perps. Very compelling arguments about why it's not just sort of now is the time, but it's actually critical that we do this now as an ecosystem, that we come up with a perp solution that can compete with Hyperliquid, because things happen at the weekend. TradFi traders are going to Hyperliquid and they're trading there. Now, as geopolitical uncertainty sort of unwinds a little bit, maybe we're going to see, as Finn was mentioning earlier before the stream, some of those volumes decline over the weekend, but it doesn't change the fact that the opportunity is there for Solana. It doesn't change the fact that it's critical that Solana builds something that can compete with Hyperliquid in the long run there. Now, as I'm going to just pull up the next story in a second, but a final question for you both, and I'm sure you've been thinking about this as well. Can Solana, or in your sort of personal opinions, do you think Solana can produce something that's 5 times better than Hyperliquid within the next 12 months, at a stretch within the next 24 months before that opportunity window closes?
I don't know how to quantify how a perp could be 5 times better than another, but I think that Solana can absolutely produce a perp that is consistently better than Hyperliquid. Whether that happens, I don't know. I think there's a lot of very, very intelligent people working on some extremely brilliant products, and I would love to see them succeed, and I would love to see all of that flow move over to Solana. I think the position is there for the taking. Yes, short answer is I think we do. I think we can absolutely see a competitor arise.
No, I'm going to take the other side on this one. I don't think it's possible in the next 12 months to beat it. I maybe technically we could get up there, right? I know that there's technical differences. We've had some issues to get there. But I mean, the flywheel that they have at Hyperliquid is insane, right? It's hard to avoid it. And, as like a Solana focused person, I want to, say that we're going to overtake them. But I mean, looking at the volumes there, it is just insane what they've done. So I think that it's going to take a lot more than just the technical differences, right? You're going to need the community. You're going to need, the traders that are trading hundreds of millions of dollars. I think that there's a lot that went into it that they got right. Do I think that we can compete? Yes. Do I think it's going to be in the next year? Probably not.
Clear. Now, as Thomas mentioned, we did do a deep dive on Solana's perp scene and how everything sort of stacks up in relation to Hyperliquid. It's an interesting deep dive, some surprising discoveries there as well. So you can go to SolanaFloor YouTube and check that out. Now, story number 5. Got a massive number in the headline. We love to see it. It's got a big T next to it. The headline here is, again, big number. Solana powered $1.1 trillion in economic activity in Q1. That's a new quarterly all-time high. We love to see it. And it eclipses the meme coin peak, which I think is, at least to me, the standout reality here. Because if you look through the timeline over the last 4 months. You've seen a whole list of posts from people with .eth on the end of their name saying, haha, all your users are gone, all the trenches are broke, and they're not coming back. So, Finn, what is driving this $1 trillion of Q1 activity on Solana? And is there a deeper context beyond it being sort of higher than the meme coin peak that we're kind of missing right now?
The answer to that, Jack, is stablecoins. Stablecoins on Solana are absolutely ripping. We're hitting near all-time highs in supply. Transfer volumes are absolutely staggering. And to your point, meme coin volume has dropped off, and that's been replaced by stablecoin to stablecoin swaps. So stablecoins are everywhere. That's what's driving the statistic. I think there's a few fascinating extra concept points that need to go into this. So you can see there in that graph that Solana is actually gaining on Ethereum in economic activity. So while Ethereum has got just a gargantuan amount of TVL, and that Solana is basically a tiny frog next to everything that's going on in Ethereum, the usage and the activity on Solana is starting to actually rival the mass of what's on Ethereum. So we're digging our way back. There's a lot more activity, there's a lot more usage, there's a lot more organic desire for just moving money around on Solana than I think there is on Ethereum, which is critically important. And the other side of that graph there is that network fees and revenue are actually climbing over Ethereum there. So Solana, despite having far less TVL, is actually becoming a hotbed of payments and of moving money very, very quickly. So very, very exciting. I think stablecoins are the majority of what's going on there, but there's also a lot of supporting factors that are really driving that forward as well. So we talked a lot about tokenized stocks. We've seen pre-stocks recently do extremely well. Anthropic, SpaceX, OpenAI. Pre-stocks is bringing all of these equity vehicles on chain, and that's giving people opportunities that they would not have had in the past. So I think a lot of this economic activity is driven by the variety of what people can access on Solana. And again, it's payment. It's coming down to the ability to move money across the world in the snap of a fingers at extremely low cost. So very, very exciting, I think. Thomas, do you think that we're over-indexing on stablecoins here? Do you think that actually we need to go back to more intensive trading, or do you think that payments is so critically important to the growth of the network?
I like it. I think that the payments are sticky, right? I think people are going to continue using stablecoins, and I think, it's probably more of just where we're at in the cycle, right? It's not a raging bull market. People aren't YOLOing everything into meme coins right now. It kind of seems like things are just picking up now, where I think that we maintain a lot of these stablecoin, transfers and a lot of these numbers, while, we'll see the increase in transactions really come through when things get crazy. I hope they do get crazy, but it seems to me like it's more of timing in the market and where we're at. But I mean, these numbers are impressive. I mean, it's crazy to think that there's just trillions of dollars being passed around, and to see the revenues actually go up and network fees go up, to be more than Ethereum, where Ethereum transaction fees are way higher. Like, this was something that Solana was criticized for in the beginning, right? They said no way it was going to be sustainable, no way you're ever going to actually make any money doing this with these cheap of fees. And here we are now, and it's fully proven itself out. So I read these with a big smile on my face, and I think that all of these stats are fantastic.
2 points to sort of bring some journalistic integrity and some balance to the discussion. We were talking about, some of the ethers commenting negatively here. Chain revenue still far from 2025 highs. Yes, as much as a lot of the activity has been moved away from meme coin activity over to stablecoin activity, which arguably is far more sustainable, much less focused on gambling and casino activity. We are still not quite back to where we were at the peak of 2025. I'm curious what you think about that. But before we get to that point, we have an interesting comment here from the community. Finn, this one's for you. How much of Sol total volume daily is just volume bots trading back and forth on bundle launches? I believe before the stream you mentioned that the data to some extent had excluded some of this. So curious what your take on that is.
Obviously, volume bots do exist. Obviously, volume bots do generate volume, and that can be counted in. I think most of the reputable data analysts that we look to for these kind of stats have ways of filtering that out. But as for bundled launches, that all kind of leans into the meme coin casino land. And as we've seen, while meme coin volume represented around 60% of the total DEX volume on Solana in months gone past, I believe 6% was the peak. That was probably around the Trump launch time, if we go back to Q1 2025. That's dropped off a cliff. So at the moment, if you go and check that stat, meme coin volume share is around probably 10%, maybe 15%, obviously fluctuating. And stablecoin swaps has actually surpassed that. And stablecoin swaps now make up around 25% of total DEX volume. So look, I don't think that bots are just swapping stablecoins between each other. I think there's obviously a lot of programmatic trading that is used to arbitrage prices between them. That exists in every financial market in the world. So if you go to Wall Street, obviously there's going to be programmatic bots finding arbitrage opportunities between different pairs as well. So look, yes, there has been a history of high volume in meme coins and bots and things like that. I think we've filtered that out. I think we're going to somewhere far more mature moving forward.
What about this? The network revenue comparison between way back when you mentioned the sort of peak meme coin season and today, and then also you've got a nice little chart here about hyperliquid as well. So zoom out, give us a bit of context in terms of to what extent we should be sort of waving a victory flag, celebrating this $1.1 trillion quarterly economic activity as a headline.
Yeah, so we'll start with this first one. So this chart here up on the top in the green, we can see network revenue and REV obviously spiking at the time of maximum meme coin casino. So Q1 2025, we had Trump, we had Melania, we had Libra, we had the president of Argentina saying he got hacked and launching a coin. And these events caused huge amounts of network congestion as people fall over each other to get entries into these ridiculous political meme coins. When that happens, people start ramping up their priority fees. They need their transactions to get included, so they're willing to pay a lot more for that to go through. And that's where a lot of that came from. Now, we've moved away from that meme coin circus. As we've said, we're going to more mature asset classes. We've got tokenized stocks, we've got RWAs, a lot of stablecoin flows there as well. So that has inevitably dropped off. I think if we had a booming meme coin season again, we would see this all come back probably to some degree, maybe a bit less pronounced because there has been some technical improvements that would mean that you don't need to ramp up the priority fees so high. But yeah, I think this is just swings and roundabouts. It probably comes back in a different form. And I believe that form is intended to be perp. So Jack, if we scroll down a wee bit more, I have this belief that all the meme coin traders, they decided to change their strategies and they all became perps traders instead. And a big part of that is that it feels a lot more professional. You feel a lot better if you make a trade on a 10x on oil than you do if you just got the right meme out of a bunch of 10 coins that all got launched at the same time. So look, I think perps became the new meme coin casino, and that's very evidently expressed in the second graph here. So we've got hyperliquid revenue and REV, which in this time when meme coins dropped off the face of the earth, hyperliquid brought in HIP3, it started adding perps on real world assets, and we can see that they've just consistently grown, they've consistently thrived, and that's where people are sending their money now. So that's the market that Solana needs to recapture. And as we've said, it's time for a Solana PropAMMs to stand up and take that crown and bring all that capital back to Solana.
Absolutely. You saw the comment popping up on screen there saying potentially rip meme coins. We don't know. They might come back. Crypto's so unpredictable from 1 month to the next. I think it only takes one head of state launching a meme coin again, and things could change. We've seen some failed attempts. Previous New York City Mayor Eric Adams had a bit of a dabble in meme coins not too long ago. He was seen, I want to say 2-3 weeks ago, with an Albanian citizenship, I think, application, which went through. So crazy things happen in the world of meme coins. Don't count them out. Now, story number 6. We have to move over to this because it is an absolute zinger, and we're going to get to the honorable mentions of the week in a second. Now, if you are personally impacted by this or offended by the headline, then please reach out to us. Drop a comment in the chat here. I'd love to hear from you as to why you are frustrated by what has happened with this Solstice airdrop. The headline is Solstice farmers are disappointed by $7 airdrop registration fees. Finn, I think this is peak crypto drama. You've written many headlines in the past about people being disgruntled, furious by sort of the hoops that they have to jump through to get their airdrop allocations, and then being even more disappointed by how much they got in light of the very little work that they did. So Solstice Finance is heading into a TG here. The community is not happy. There are a few reasons. It's not just the fees. So let's be fair to those people, to the furious farmers. There's the controversial registration fee, which we just covered. There's a 7-day window to register, which in all fairness, not that long. Although what I'm thinking is, who in this economy is offline for 7 consecutive days? Getting angry about 7 days probably isn't that fair. But at the end of the day, if 99% plus of your participants are ranking in the lowest possible tier of airdrop allocation, there's it may be a few reasons to be frustrated, other reasons why you shouldn't be that frustrated, but a lot to unpack. Finn, why are these people fuming?
So this is a classic case of, I think, people getting their wires crossed. Solstice came out and they said, it's TGE time. You've been waiting for this for a very long time. Let's reward the people. So to be eligible for this, obviously, you needed to be using Solstice. You needed to be holding some USX. You need to be earning your flares. That's all very, very standard crypto fare these days. People are pissed off for 2 reasons. The first is that Click, who is the infrastructure provider for the airdrop, is charging a 0.075 Sol fee to everyone who registers. That's about $7. When we have, I believe, over 1 million eligible wallets who can register, if every single wallet were to register, then Click would walk off with $9.2 million for a simple airdrop process. And as you mentioned, the other part people are pissed off about is that there's only a 7-day window in which you can registering, they get your airdrop on TGE day. Solstice has since come out and they've basically addressed all of this. So first of all, the 7-day window has been extended. So if you are, worried about not getting in there on time, you're going to have an extra week. Don't worry about it too much. Click is obviously collecting all those fees, but something that Solstice mentioned was that yes, there's 1 million eligible wallets, but only around 50,000 of those actually deposited funds into the protocol and are going to get a substantial, or not a substantial, but a considerable or consequential amount of SLX tokens when that TGE finally happens. So I think it's probably an overreaction to say that Click is going to get $9.2 million out of this. I believe at this stage, you probably only have around 10,000 or so wallets who have actually gone through the process and done the registry. So for me, it's almost like it's not so much Click is trying to make a whole lot of money out of this. It's just an anti-Sybil measure. They're trying to prevent bots from, farming out the airdrop. And I think most people, the vast majority of those million wallets there, haven't contributed anything to Solstice at all, and they're not going to be getting more than their registration fee. So effectively, it's all balanced out. Some vibe coders have come out and said, I've calculated, what we can expect allocations to be, and you need around 359,000 Solstice flares to break even on the fee. So look, this is a classic Solana airdrop story. Protocols work very hard to have everything set up, and people always find something to be pissed off about. It's a to and fro, it's a backwards and forwards, and I'm hoping that Solstice actually comes out and this is a successful airdrop for everyone involved. Obviously, we need more stablecoins on Solana. We were mentioning that earlier. Thomas, you want a bit more diversity of stablecoins. Solstice is doing that. They've got $370 million or so in TVL. So they're actually, I think, the 11th largest DeFi app on Solana now in terms of TVL. They're not nobody. Look, I'm curious to see how this plays out. Thomas, were you farming this at all? Did you have any USX exposure?
No, I missed this one, so I am not a furious farmer on this one. Was the airdrop pretty big? Like you mentioned, 350,000 flares in order to break even on that. Like if I'm paying a $7 fee on $1,000, that's nothing. But if it's a $7 fee for a $10 airdrop, that would be a little crazy. Like do you have any idea like what those actual payouts were?
I've got no idea what they're going to be. I think most people are expecting that TGE Day is going to be in 2 weeks or so. So I think we'll see then. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about how we need more stable coins and they're doing fantastic. So, I'm rooting for it to be a successful launch and for them to keep going. It'll be interesting to see, how many people were farming it. So it'll be interesting to see the TVL, does it drop after this? Do they sell and go back into it? It'll be a interesting, study to see what happens, but I'm rooting for them.
Yeah.
Do they pull a SKR and they do their TG and then all of a sudden everything actually turns around and they become far more successful than they've ever been before?
They should.
They
absolutely should. Yeah. I mean, can they get away with that after there's this much frustration, so many fuming airdrop farmers? Yeah, I mean, people seem to have a very short memory on CT in general. So I'm going to remain optimistic. But to what extent they can emulate the success of the SKR launch, I think remains to be seen. Any thoughts on that, Thomas?
Yeah, I honestly need to look into this protocol more to see like what the continued plans are, what the tokenomics are. But I mean, I think when it comes down to it, just airdropping a token out once it doesn't seem to be the best strategy, right? Like there has to be, some unique way that you have, another season going or something along those lines, right? There you need to actually think about that pretty hard because once you do your airdrop, it's like that's like the moment of truth. All right, are we gonna continue to have these users as users, or are they just gonna take the money and run? Right. So be curious. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I think there's some historical evidence that suggests there's not a huge amount of demand for SLX, if I'm being honest. If we go back to December, they hosted an ICO. I believe they were targeting around $4 million and they raised about 15% of that. I think they got to 600K or so. In their defense, the ICO was held, I believe, over Christmas Day or in the days kind of leading up to Christmas Day. So it wasn't great timing for their part. But look, historically, people haven't been falling over each other to get their hands on SLX. So we'll need to see how that all plays out on TGE Day, I think.
Yep, I think everyone wants free lunch, and in 2026, we're just not getting it anymore. Now, Finn, your newsletter this week, I feel, has possibly the longest list of honorable mentions that, at least to my memory, we've ever seen, which just goes to show how much of a news-packed week it has really been. So let's dive into these honorable mentions before very quickly talking through the state of Solana in a week and, of course, the stat of the week. And then we have some announcements for you as well. Honorable mentions, Finn, take it away.
Yeah, hard to do honorable mentions because there's so much going on and I was so excited about all the wonderful things happening. So let's get into it. Singapore Gulf Bank launches a native stablecoin mint and redeem service with no gas, mint, or bank fees. X launches cash tags. We've got a whole list of Solana-based partners there, including Jupiter, Helios, Birdeye, and Dialect. Phoenix Trade matches up to $5,000 in losses for affected drip users. So we mentioned earlier that Phoenix is an emerging perps dex. They've jumped on this drift hack to, attempt to get some people to come on and start trading on Phoenix using some of those losses. So hope that works out for them. Pumpcade raises $5 million with support from Jump Foundation Capital. Tokenized stock volume hits new weekly all-time high of 163 million. Y Combinator settles $500,000 Totalis funding round on Solana for the first time ever. So that's very exciting. Archeum launches agent skills, enabling agents to build encrypted apps. TCG Gacha spend on Solana surpasses 233.8 million in Q1 2026. JupiterLend enables SPYX, NASDAQ X, NVIDIA X, and Tesla X as collateral. 00 Edge goes live in beta. Pre-stocks crosses $750 million in total volume and launches tokenized Neuralink equity. And Helium records 350 million daily users through its carrier offload. So a huge swath of extremely bullish updates there. Jack, I'm going to throw it to you first here. What's standing out to you?
The list is so long, so I'm going to pick two, and they're going to be my joint favorites, and they're both to do with tokenized stocks. We want to bring the whole world, the entire financial system of the world on chain, and these two stories here, I think, are massive steps in that direction. So JupiterLend enables SpyX, QQQX, NVIDIA X, and Tesla X as collateral. If I hold on-chain stocks, I want to be able to use them, right? I want some sort of DeFi utility to exist. So hats off to Jupiter. Those guys will continue shipping, and I think this is great. In addition to that, I'm going to put this in the same category. Pre-stocks crosses $750 million in total volume and launches tokenized Neuralink equity as well. Look, this is great. We talk about democratizing access to finance. There have been some, let's say, failed attempts in the past where very risky financial instruments were essentially sold to retail as the sort of VCs, the earlier buyers, were dumping them. I don't feel that this is one of those cases. I could be proven wrong. But if on-chain capital markets, internet capital markets are the future, then this is great. I want to be able to invest in companies that haven't gone public yet. Some of the biggest wealth creation opportunities in the world, as we know, are essentially gate-kept for private investors. And these people are accredited investors, aka they have millions and millions of dollars of discretionary disposable capital, and we don't. So those two stories are my favorites. What about you, TB?
Man, I love the pre-stocks. I mean, crossing 750 million. I think that it's going to keep going. I kind of want to check out this Neuralink now. So I'm going to go with two as well. I love pre-stocks, so I'm excited to see that. And then also Archeum. So I'm an Archeum fan. I mean, encrypted apps seems like a really cool use case of crypto in general. So I want to see where this goes, and I want to test it out.
I want a Tether pre-stock. I don't know who I have to talk to make it happen, but someone out there,
Yeah.
pre-stocks team, make it happen. Give us Tether pre-stocks, and I'll thank you.
Okay. Hear me out. I was thinking about this before the stream as well. We were talking about, what's actually going to happen with Tether and Circle and all the rest. And I mentioned in very early in the live stream, there's some of the context of Tether and how big they are, how much they're OGs, and the amount of assets that they have, right? Over $23 billion in gold, over $100 billion in UST bills and bonds, and so on and so forth. So what I'm thinking is, would it benefit Tether as a relatively small, lean, agile, extremely profitable organization to go public? I don't know. But then again, I was proven wrong by Circle's IPO, pardon me. So when they went public, I didn't see that coming. I thought it would be later on than it was. A lot of people made a shitload of money on that. So I suspect if Tether does decide to go public, it'll be a massive wealth creation opportunity as well. Is it going to happen anytime soon? I don't know, because I don't feel that they need to do it. But I could be proven wrong. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like that idea. And I mean, everybody's bullish on stable coins, but how do you make money on them? Right? It's a very hard thing to do.
You can't just buy USDT.
Yeah, it's not going to $2, people. It's going to stay $1. So for there to be a way to actually make money on it, I think that giving people access to that would be good. And I don't know if they need it at this point, but I know when they were originally talking about going public, that it was going to be a good way to get partners and get people on board with their company would be to give them some equity and give them access to it. But I mean, they're also the biggest stable coin. So I don't know how valid that take is, but I know that I've heard that one before. What do you think, Finn?
Yeah. Maybe they were thinking about it because they felt they needed it. Now I feel like they're absolutely ginormous.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that's going to look like. Finn, if you do manage to get an email in there, please let them know that we will be day one buyers of their pre-stocks.
Yeah, look, maybe it's the old used car salesman in me, but Tether actually doesn't have to plan an IPO for us to, enjoy the prospect of a pre-stock Tether, or a Tether pre-stock. Sorry, even the fact that people could speculate on the idea that maybe they would one day do an IPO, I think that's enough for pre-stocks to do incredibly well out of this. So, cross your fingers, wait and see.
All right, now let's move on. A quick reminder here that we did talk with James Seyfarth of Bloomberg Intelligence just yesterday. That was our Thursday live stream called The Big Picture. It's a banger episode, to be honest. James, such a prolific speaker, but he's got a massive amount of alpha when it comes to understanding what institutions are doing on chain, because he talks to these people daily. He's in meetings with the TradFi guys, and he speaks our language. A bit of a degen at heart, I'm sure. So go and listen to that episode if you are interested. He's got some very interesting theories about basket type ETF products. He mentioned to us that he thinks on-chain tokenized ETFs are soon going to be not just reality, but actually the sort of the bog standard of what's going on. And he thinks tokenization is not only the future, but it's coming to ETFs as well. Some interesting theories from James Seyfarth. Thomas, what was your biggest takeaway from talking to James yesterday?
Man, it was great to talk to him. First of all, I feel like I was like a long time caller, first time actually, like long time fan, first time actually talking to him. So it was good to talk to him. It was good to hear his angles. He was talking about the baskets of assets for crypto, and I was like, I actually want to buy that. That sounds like something I want. So to hear that, and to hear how people trade these ETFs and how cheap they actually are in size. He was saying people could buy billions of dollars worth of these ETFs at a very low cost for the actual transaction. So I think that was interesting. He had so many good takes, man. It was good talking to him.
Absolutely. Now let's get over to the final part of this banger of a newsletter, the stat of the week. This is going to have some fallout, I feel. Our colleague Pablo was basically saying this isn't going to end nicely, but we mentioned that it might end rather abruptly. Finn, what is the stat of the week, sir?
Today's stat of the week is stablecoin dominance. So obviously the fallout of the Tether and Circle conundrum hasn't played out yet. It's starting to play out, Jack. I think you shared a screenshot with me earlier that USDT supply is up and USDC supply is down on Solana at the moment. This is a graph to keep your eye on over the next few months. Has Tether's role to step in here and save Solana DeFi? Will that have repercussions? Will USDT become the dominant de facto stablecoin on Solana? Or do people not actually care enough to swap out of USDC? Do all the TradFi fat cats on Wall Street prefer USDC, and are they actually going to be phased by what's going on with Drift? Who knows? Let's check back to the stat in a few weeks and see if people care as much as they say they care.
Yeah, let's have a little internal prediction market conversation here. I suspect that within 12 months, USDC will have lost about 15 to 20, push comes to shove, 25% market share. But I think that's really on the high end. As you said, Finn, I don't think too many people with very large sums are going to be particularly bothered by this for a long list of reasons. But that's my sort of bull and bear case, 10 to 25% market share loss. Within Solana specifically, of course. So we might see this number coming down a bit. And I suspect Tether will probably take 80% of that loss, and some of the newer emerging stable coins will probably eat up the rest. Any thoughts from you guys? How wrong am I?
That's a fair guess, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see a lot more of these gain more traction. Like I'm looking on that list, like Jupe USD. I mean, that it would be good to see them get higher. Sky. I mean, I feel like there's just a lot of good stable coins on this list that don't have any dominance, and I think the conversation is now front and center. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than 25% drop on USDC on Solana. But we'll see.
Finn, I'm going to force you into an answer here.
Look, I think USDC is going to retain dominance. I don't think USDT is going to flip USDC anytime soon. I think if all the Solana DeFi users come out and say, I'm swapping my 3, 4, 5-figure stablecoin holdings over, that's not going to make much of a difference. I think the people moving serious capital that have got a lot of money tied up in the hedge funds of the world, I think they're going to stick with USDC. They're going to rely on that regulatory moat that USDC has worked so hard to build. So yes, stablecoin wars are absolutely coming. I would love to see a lot more competition here. I would love to see USDT gain a lot more dominance. And there's action starting there. But it's gonna be a snowball effect. I think it's going to take a while.
Just to be clear, you think Circle will lose less than 10% market share in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I'll go on board and say that. I feel like we're probably maybe around 10 to 15%, but in 12 months' time, I still expect Circle to be the de facto stablecoin on Solana.
All right, somebody launch a poly market on this. We will be in there, of course, and we'll be monitoring it. Now, state of Solana in a tweet. This is a banger tweet from Lily. She comes out with these well-argued, very eloquent statements at times, and it sort of draws on the founding ethos of crypto, if you will, the original ethos. She talks about decentralization. She talks about things before they were Web3, before they were digital assets, before they were blockchain. We love to see it. Finn, talk me through this. What's Lily arguing for?
So Lily Liu, president of the Solana Foundation, says, here's why I'm excited about USDT growing on Solana. USDT is the original stablecoin, still the largest, most liquid-based asset in crypto, underpinning the majority of trading activity. Solana is built for trading, and in markets, liquidity is king. So the most performant on-chain trading infrastructure and the deepest pool of liquidity converging isn't a coincidence, it's inevitable. Values matter too. The Tether team are OGs. They remember when this industry wasn't Web3 or digital assets or blockchain, it was just crypto. Open financial infrastructure enabling economic sovereignty. Just getting started. The most important line here for me is where she says values matter too. So this is coming straight from the president of the Solana Foundation. This is a very, very clear message on who they're aligning with long-term, who they want to see succeed, and how they feel about what's happened over the past 2 weeks with the refusal to act by some stablecoin issuers. So keep your popcorn out and get ready to watch this one because it's going to continue to be an absolute belter.
It's going to be spicy. Certainly going to be spicy. We expect to see a lot more happening around stablecoins. One of the commenters there called it a stablecoin war. We've spoken about all sorts of wars, from meme coins to launch pads to perp CEXes on Solana. So It's going to be very, very interesting to watch. A very quick reminder to our audience here, just before we wrap up, that we have our next episode of The Big Picture next Thursday. The show is, of course, every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We have Mike Dudas from Six Man Ventures joining us. So I'm expecting some banger hot takes from him. He doesn't really like to pull his punches. When he joined Thomas and Finn in Breakpoint during our live stream there, he definitely had some spicy takes. We also have Super Team USA's very own Nikki Scans joining us soon after that. And Hasib Qureshi, another brilliant speaker, thinks a lot about some of these high-level issues that impact us all. He's got a very first principles way of arguing things. So excited to chat with him as well. Thomas, any sort of questions that you're burning to ask Mike or Nikki or Hasib that we can sort of foreshadow before the time?
Oh man. I mean, first of all, I am so excited about these guests. I feel like we got to talk pump fun with Dudas. I feel like he always has hot takes there. I want to hear more about like how venture capital is doing, like what the state of it is. He's pretty front and center on that. And then Hasib is just a legend. I just want an hour of his hot takes. He's like a hot take machine. So I want to hear what he's thinking about. I know he was a big poker player back in the day. I played a lot of online poker myself in college, so I definitely watch him play higher stakes. So wouldn't mind bringing that up too. But yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Excellent. Looking forward to those conversations. Do let us know in the comments, of course, what you would like to ask them. It's sort of a rare opportunity that we get to talk to these people. So anyone who's listening, part of our audience, definitely let us know what you would like us to ask them. With that, Finn, Thomas, as always, thank you both. It's been a great chat. Hopefully, it is a green weekend. It's, as we mentioned earlier, one of the first green Fridays that we've had in a long time. Hopefully by Monday, we are still seeing lots of green candles. Thank you both, and GN to you.
GN.
Thanks, guys.